Guyana is now a full-fledged oil-producing nation. But how much do you know about this valuable yet finite resource? On our radio program, Guyana's Oil and You, we strike at the heart of every issue with informed views and credible data. The time is now for you to arm yourself with insightful knowledge on your oil wealth. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's episode of Guyana's Oil and You. I'm your hostess, Kiana Wilberg, editor at Kaieteur News, and joining us tonight is Shadow Minister of Oil and Gas, Mr. David Patterson. Sir, welcome to our studios, and thank you for being here tonight.
Oh, good night to you and your viewers. Kiana, it's my pleasure, always my pleasure to join you on these important matters.
Thank you very much, sir. So we have a very important topic to discuss tonight, and that is the Gas to Energy project, which is being led by the People's Progressive Party. And there's so much concern about this project, and I'd like for us to get into some of those issues that we see coming out in the media as well as being talked about on different platforms. So without further ado, I'll get into one of the first concern, and that has to do with whether the political opposition is convinced that the PPP has a clear-cut plan for the use of all the gas that it intends to bring to shore.
Well, first up, I think we're on record of saying that we think that they're rushing it. Mm-hmm. We think that the project as they have put out is very sparse, based on no new studies. The studies that they're being using to pilot the project, where all the studies are done on the AP and UAFC. The numbers they're putting out are needs investigating. The numbers they're saying, they're claiming they can get the amount of gas, the excess gas, the gas they can get every day, and the excess gas for other product. That needs investigating. It just doesn't add up. And based on the information we would have had when we were in government, it definitely shows that this is a rush project, very, very, very scantily thought out. So in a nutshell, no, we don't think that they have a really good idea what they're doing. We just think that they saw an opportunity, came into office, took a project which was valued and could have been done for half the price and just pushing it ahead. The several areas are not even defined as yet. We're only talking now about the pipeline, but there's other components of the project. We've heard nothing about that. We heard about the costs and those and the associated costs with those, which is like the generators, getting the power to GPL. So as a whole project, we're just concentrating on the pipeline itself. Mm-hmm. But as a whole project, it's very, very ill prepared and ill thought out.
Now, do you believe that with a population of roughly 700,000 people, that we actually have the market for all of this gas that the government intends to bring? Because it's my understanding that they intend to put a pipeline that can take as much as 120 million standard cubic feet of gas.
Right. So that is the first part of the issue. I can tell you, if we go back to the initial stages of the project, in 2018, Exxon has said to the government, to my ministry, while it was under my ministry, up until August of 2018, when then the Department of Energy started. In 2018, Exxon said explicitly that the total amount of gas that they would be getting would be 0.8 trillion cubic feet per day. Mm-hmm. And they provided us with a breakdown saying that fuel for the SPSO would be 0.1 trillion, reinjection would be 0.5, and therefore what is available for us would be 0.2, which is equivalent to 30 million cubic feet per day. That has now risen by no new studies, no new information. I'm talking about, and they would have designed the SPSO as well as the all the gas flaring and the reinjection system to the data that they would have given us, I would assume, up to January of 2018. It has now doubled. The Lisa, we were told, I mean, I distinctly asked that if Lisa 2 has a lot of gas, and they said no, there was no excess gas in Lisa 2, so therefore only gas available would be Lisa 1, which is exactly what they're still saying now.
So it was never envisioned to have, under the APNU, it was never envisioned to have Lisa 2 connected to this project.
No.
But now it is.
Now it is.
Okay.
Right? So there could be several explanations for that, Kiana, in the sense that one, Exxon underestimated the amount of gas, and that's probably is a reasonable assumption, or assumption in which you can move forward because of the excess flaring that they would have had, because of the equipment that they would have installed in Lisa 1, which would have been based on the information they provided to us in 2018, failed. So I do think, and I must say to your viewers, I met the opposition met with the Exxon personnel, 3 of them, including the country director, I think that's his name, and he informed us, as on April the 22nd this year, he informed us that the gas that they're flaring, the gas that they're producing now is 0.8 to 1.2, which is like 50% more than what they told us was available. So that's one, but they and that follows all the issues that they would have had with the flaring, because obviously they probably would have designed for what they shared with us, which is saying that there's only about 0.8 trillion cubic feet per day, and 0.2 has to be used for available for gas sales.
Yes.
But he did inform that they're currently producing 0.8 to 1.2 trillion cubic feet per day, and that fits in line. I think Dr. Vince Adams has been on record saying that Exxon are flaring more than normal, I mean, based on the numbers that they have. So when we designed the project saying that it's just going to be a temporary project, it was only for 30 million cubic feet per day. This project is now 50 million cubic feet per day. And at 30 million cubic feet per day, we are only going to get 188 megawatts of power for 15 years.
Okay.
Because those were the information in January, let's say, yes, in January the 23rd, 2018, that they would have provided us. So we would have worked with that. Along with that, we would be able to get LPG for about 2,000 barrels per day, and that is just about the amount of LPG, which is cooking gas, that the country uses per day. So we would become self-sufficient in that. I'm hearing numbers of 3,000 excess and those things like that. But there have not been no new information put in the public space. Exxon has not released any new information. The government has not released new information. So we are just going, I mean, I'm just based on what I know up to 2020, because no new information was provided up to 2020. So therefore, obviously, there's something has happened, but no one has actually found it fit to sit with the Guyanese public and tell them what has happened. So I mean, the numbers that they're putting out are not sustainable. I heard they're speaking about urea and those things like that. That's not possible, even with 50 million, even with the increase among, because there's not that much excess gas available.
But Mr. Patterson, this is what sort of baffles myself and many individuals who've been following the Exxonmobil exploration and production process since 2015. Since then, Exxon did declare that it had found considerable amounts of gas. However, it would be re-injecting 100% of this gas. How did we move from that position to now having this amount of gas available? What actually went wrong in the assessments that were being done by ExxonMobil?
Well, I don't know what went wrong. I know that as a government, and I actually found the email, I think I posted it online, that Minister Trotman, who's in charge of the agency at the time, of oil and gas at the time, did actually write to Exxon, because when they first met with the government again, the very first official meeting with the cabinet, they wanted to flare all the excess gas. I mean, because they said, and then the government said, no, you can't flare. We not permit flaring. Mm-hmm. They then went on to say that they found a solution which they can re-inject all the gas. And we said, fair enough. And then I think we spoke to them and said, oh, give us the profiles. I mean, what can be done and what can be done? And they said, well, listen to me, their models show that they will be this little 30 million cubic feet of gas available and can be made available. And that's how the project started. But and at all times, there's no excess gas in Lisa. They said to us in Payara that is heavy oil, and they had to bring whatever associated gas and all the other finds that they were going to develop had to be re-injected. So therefore, obviously, the only available gas can be with this 30 million cubic feet from Lisa 1 mm-hmm. for 15 years. They also said to us, and it's interesting because I do have this in record, saying that if they produce 50 million, which is what the government is saying, it only will be available for 11 years. So we had to make a decision if 15 years of gas was worth the investment.
Yes.
And at that and the price at the time was $400 million. And when we calculated, we said fair enough, the dual fuel sets for $400 million. We thought that's sustainable because obviously the sets will still be here and we can now convert them back. Because it could either be HFO as well as natural gas. Mm-hmm. And we also said that, listen to me, we want to transition into renewable energy, and we had in our energy mix program, which the PPP are using because they released that as part of the justification for this project. We said that we needed a medium-sized hydro, and we had 5 candidates under consideration, including the Milo Falls, which would give us about the same 150, 200 megawatts. And we said, well, in the 15 years, while there's the gas, because the limit of our project would have been 15 years, while there's the gas, we would put the mini hydros, or the medium-sized hydros in place, and then move on.
Okay. So with that said, I know that you are in receipt of an entirely different picture of what amount of gas was available at the time. But now you're seeing from the PPP's end that there are different numbers that are available, and Exxonmobil has published different information to what you are presenting as to what is available for use when it's brought to shore. Do you believe that the APNU was misled, given what Exxonmobil has now put forward?
I would like to think that Exxonmobil may have made a miscalculation, and at the time when they presented the information, they thought that was a genuine numbers. But I think when they started production, that is when the true picture of the exact volume of gas available became apparent. Because as you remember, Guyana, as soon as they started production, the equipment failed. Mm-hmm. Vibrations in the, what I can't remember the technical term of it, there was vibrations in that particular element, and it failed twice. Mm-hmm. I would assume that is because they designed it for the information that they would have told us, because in 2018, Lisa Destiny was already in production. The SPSO was already in Singapore in production by January 2018. So I think that they would have based their model on that, but then actually when they actually started working, it was a miscalculation. But they never came back and said it publicly. They may have said it to the government, and that's how they're accessed. And
hence the mechanical issues that we saw.
And I really would like to I know that Dr. Vince Adams, he based on the volume that they were claiming that they were flaring initially while he was there and after, he was adamant that they were flaring more gas than the numbers they provided to us, because he did a calculation which said that either they were producing more oil, because there was an equivalency of gas to oil production, and he was adamant that therefore they're producing more oil than they're declaring, or there's more gas, associated gas, when they're doing their production. Those are things those are questions that still remain unanswered, and I do think that it should be. But I note how I specifically asked Exxon this in April the 22nd, and I was surprised, and I was even questioning them to say, listen to me, hold on a second, my records, because of course I have them right in front of me here, shows me you wrote to us saying this is the amount of gas available. They just simply said that they're producing, that's what they're producing at the moment.
But since meeting, because earlier you said that the opposition has had the opportunity to meet with Exxonmobil up to April this year.
One time.
Have you since requested to have a meeting with Exxonmobil to try to understand, or to be provided some justification to understand how do you move from having this amount of gas that you told us while we were in office is available, as opposed to what you're now telling the People's Progressive Party is available?
Right.
Have you asked them to justify that?
Right. No, we have not asked for a formal meeting, but this is a question that we raised at our meeting, at our formal meeting with the opposition, and obviously we thought it would be prudent that they would share the information. There's a difference now between the interaction with Exxon and the opposition from when 2015, 2020 to now. Previously, whenever Exxon came to brief the government under our administration, they were mandated to go and give an equally similar briefing to the opposition. That doesn't happen. You can remember the hassle that we would have had to demand a meeting, to get the meeting, and the conditions that were applied for what you can do and what you can't do. So therefore, there's no contact, and of course, Exxon says, and rightfully so, that they deal with the government today, and they're dealing with the government today. So therefore, obviously, any information they will say to us, we have to apply to Ministry of Natural Resources.
So the opposition is also being told that whatever information you need to get it from the Ministry
of Natural Resources.
How does that strike you in the interest of transparency? Because at the end of the day, the company is dealing with resources that belong to the people of this country, and there are tenets of transparency and accountability that all companies are expected to adhere to. How does that strike you when that company provides you with such?
Well, Exxon are extremely skilled in dealing with countries such as Guyana, and countries that have deficiencies in transparency laws, as well as deficiencies in polarization, political issues. Just that can be highlighted, like when there was a consultation for the EIA, and I was pleased to see the amount of public involvement in it. And to the two sessions that I attended, persons asked these questions: how did you arrive at Wales? And they were very blunt to say that the government of Guyana has asked us to go there. You ask, well, what studies have you done to justify it? Because previously, in public domain, you have said out it's not an optimal site. And their response is, the government of Guyana has asked us to go there. You ask, what is it? How are you going to transport the gas? Because of course it's only a pipeline that is going there. When the gas comes onto shore, and the government is talking about other agencies or other industries around the gas, how is that going to be transported? They set out Exxon's liability stops at the pipeline. So they're very skillful at not answering any questions, and they just deflect it back to say it's the government. So whenever you ask, as a reporter, you would ask, well, what new studies? We have provided it to the government. We've done everything to the government, and of course, the government is not very transparent. The issues that EITI has issues at the moment. The EITI is they have a couple of issues whereby the working committee is not set up. The report which is supposed to be done in the committee has to be set up, and the report has to be submitted in December. There's no committee, so obviously if we fail to submit a report, you get kicked out EITI, you know what I mean? So I think they're gearing towards that. That's why they're stymieing the work of EITA. So those are the issues that you would have. But Exxon, as a whole, very skillful. Right, because they've done this in several other countries. I mean, Guyana is probably just another. They probably have a play sheet of how you deal with the Guyanese public and Guyanese politicians, opposition politicians. We have provided the government with it, and the government has done so. I've brought a motion on flaring in the parliament with the hope that you can actually have a debate on it, so for all the information can come out. That's languishing in the parliament to date. But we have to keep. I brought a motion on shore braces. You know, I mean, the government made, as usual, mockery and laugh of it, and they voted it down. But you can see what's happening all over the country, whereby they're just willy-nilly speculative development, and obviously, what they're trying to do is just simply corner the market without any development, and then obviously and tell the Guyanese people, oh, this is good for you. That's exactly what they're saying about the gas ashore project. They're saying it's good for you and it's going to bring down electricity prices. I'm on record as saying hogwash. That's not true. Because no matter whatever price you sell the gas at, GPL is still the only distributor, and GPL, for every megawatt, to keep GPL running, to keep GPL is 4.73 cents per megawatt. So even if the gas ashore numbers come in at 6 or 7 cents, as they're saying, it will not be. It'll be 10 and above, and then we lose 30% of our generation through line loss and commercial theft. So it'll be 10 plus 30%. So therefore, the numbers they're telling you are just at the source. They're saying, oh, it's going to be 6 cents for the gas, and that is and that may be right. 8 cents, that may be right, but by the time it gets to the consumer, it's double that. So therefore, the idea of cheap electricity, right, it's just a myth that they're putting down, and they have the private sector saying, oh yes, they can get cheap electricity, but it's not really true. Cheap electricity, that's why banks, the IH and the TDL, Noble House, all of those, they produce their own electricity and they get it for between 8 and 10 cents because they self-generate.
So the point of the APNU AFC sort of bringing that project in the first place was not for also the purpose of cheaper electricity?
Cheap and reliable electricity, right? Because you have to understand how GPL works again. It was a revelation for me because obviously, I mean, but when the ministry was placed on me and we did the research, the Warsaw plants that we have in Vreden Hoop, Kingston, new ones, they produce electricity at 11 cents. Right now, currently 11 cents. When up to when I left, I don't know what's happening there. However, GPL is not only Demerara Connected Grid. GPL has sets in Bartica. They have sets in Leguan. They have sets in Anna Regina. So while you may be able to get 11 cents produced here in Demerara, but when the whole operational cost and alignment of GPL comes together, that whole cost has to spread against. I mean, you just can't build the people in Demerara cheaper than you do in Essequibo. So GPL cost that they put to you is the cost of producing countrywide wherever they are. When we came in, when I took over the sector, one of the drivers behind it is that we needed more generation. We had very, very marginally thin, wafer-thin excess powers. I mean, the standard is you must have at least 15 to 20% above what you're using. So therefore, if your peak demand is 100 megawatts per day, you must be generating 120. That is the safety net. When the APNU AFC took over, it was like 1 or 2 megawatts over what the peak demand was. So therefore, we needed to get a large infusion of power for the Demerara grid, and that is how come. And then obviously, so we sat around and we said, listen to me. Power, the generating sets are the same. If it's a dual fuel set, so therefore if you power it by HFO or by it's the same cost for the actual unit. But then we said, fair enough, the biggest cost is the fuel. And that's how the idea of natural gas came around. So so the idea was of not only cheaper, right? To get the entire thing cheaper, you would have to do much more on the transmission and distribution line. But so therefore, so we looked at it holistically. We took a loan to improve the transmission distribution line, which paid off. So with the marginally thin electricity power that we had, we were able to keep the place running without fuel blackouts. Unfortunately, that's all changed and all down the drain at the moment.
But let's look at costs for a few minutes. On your Facebook page, you recently pointed out that the Gas to Shore project was envisioned to be about 400 million US under your time, and now with the PPP, it's doubled, or it's more than doubled.
It's 900 million.
900
More
million.
That's just the pipeline.
Yes. So with that and the other concerns that you've noted from the public as well as yours, the opposition, what action will the opposition be taking to protect the interests of the citizens where this project is concerned?
Well,
or is it just going to be
no? But one of
the
the issues I know for sure that I've asked the lawyers to look at, and which they are looking at, is the question of the last bill that was passed, which gives you persons, the government, the license to go onto private persons' land and carry the pipeline without their consent. So they're looking at that. This is the coalition lawyers, you know what I mean? I've already signaled that I'm going to bring a motion in Parliament on the Gas to Shore project itself, you know what I mean? I don't have much faith that the Speaker will allow it, you know what I mean? The Speaker is very, very nimble with finding ways in which motions cannot be heard, you know what I mean? Because the last flaring motion he set out that there's a court case in the States or something like that, and that it is sub judice, and so we can't discuss it. I'm sure he will do the same, and they will just plow right ahead. I mean, obviously we will, within our means, either through the courts or through the Parliament, attempt to bring some sort of clarity to the project. But there's not much we can do outside the courts and in Parliament. I mean, I know that the private citizens are doing something, and I encourage them to continue.
But if the political opposition is very much concerned about the project and its impact, and you believe that the plans are not as sturdy as they should be or robust as they should be, why not have, and I'm not by any means telling the opposition what to do, but I'm just judging from what I would have observed over the years. I've seen the political opposition, whether it's the APNU or the PPP, lobby the international community for projects that they don't agree with. I see them talking to so many individuals, getting interviews, getting petitions signed. I've seen the political opposition, when it wants to, challenge projects in the court.
Yeah,
So
well, we are good. As I said, the lawyers have already looked. I've already provided them with as much all the information that I can for a court case, and they are doing that. I don't want to say. We also, I don't, of course, want to say a few things because I know for sure we were very interested, and we are with the new board of Exxon. We have already preparing, so I don't want to get too much in detail, but we are we know that there are 3 board members in Exxon's new board who are particularly there concerning the environment. So that is something we've already discussed.
The Engine 1 nominees you're referring
yes.
to? Okay.
Yes. So
you intend to...
Yes. So I obviously didn't want to say much too early, but that's an avenue that we've already started looking at.
Okay.
To have make our case, because obviously it is a concern for us. I mean, started off with the flaring, started off with the EPA EPA is a concern to us. I mean, and I know that we'll be doing some action on EPA. EPA's acceptance, which seems tailor-made for Exxon on this particular situation, of on their
the
flaring.
$45 penalty you're referring
Yes,
to?
that is obviously tailor-made for Exxon, and Exxon has supply, and they get 60 days and those things like that. I mean, the Guyanese public will be, well, they wouldn't be surprised to know that within that 60 days, the calculations, Dr. Adams and his colleagues calculated it, and I think announced it, the amount of gas that we use. I mean, I know Exxon, EPA made a big splash that they collected $2 million US. We're actually losing $75 million, or lost $75 million in fines and penalties during that period, that 60 days in which they grant Exxon the issue permission to flare above. That's on record. We raised it in Parliament. So we are looking at all of those different avenues. We find EPA's approach, the EPA, new EPA, I like to call them new EPA, to everything extremely strange. You know, I mean, there are projects, a bridge going on, there's shore bases going on, and there's no demand for EIA and those things like that.
But they have said that the EPA has said that it has a meticulous screening process in place for projects. Yeah. Or is it that you don't believe that is as meticulous as they claim?
Oh, definitely. Maybe meticulous maybe have different definitions under the Guyanese circumstances. You know what I mean? Unheard of that you would be building a bridge. Unheard of that you have no EIAs. Unheard of that you allow somebody to build a shore base at the mouth of your river, because I saw they've approved a shore base somewhere, Freed and Hoop Best side, you know what I mean, which is at the mouth of a river, without no EIAs, ESIAs, you know what I mean. You're going to be building, you will be removing mangroves, you'll be disturbing the natural flow of your main river. I don't know what meticulous methodology, and you know, EPA, come on, I mean, Dr. Adams was there, and he moved it from like -0 to just over 0. They don't have the staff. So they may have a meticulous methodology on paper, but in reality,
you're seeing a different outcome.
Oh yeah. I mean, the hardest part of getting a major project approved in these days and age of climate change and those things is to get the approval of your Environmental Protection Agency. Now it seems the easiest part to get a project, the easiest hurdle to clear now to EPA, using their meticulous whatever it is they use. But Guyana, they have EPA claiming they have a meticulous methodology, and so I mean, but they have a revised criteria for submissions and so forth. For this Exxon, they place it on the website. They said, "Are we going to use the new EIAs?" Exxon must have said to them, or somebody must have said to them, "Look, this is very, very onerous," so they pulled it back. And so they're using an old, meticulous study to approve. But we're in the 21st century, you know. I mean, anybody could Google what are the requirements in any other country. But
before we close off, or continue rather on that, I'd like to close off with just a quick question on this gas to shore matter. I know that you would have received quite a few criticisms for this project, and I'll give the question and then we'll go to a quick commercial break and come back. The question is, if you had the chance, what different would you do in handling this project? We'll be right back after the short commercial break.
Kaieteur Radio, keeping you informed.
Demerara and Essequibo 99.1 FM.
Burby's 99.5 FM. Kaieteur Radio.
Good evening again, ladies and gentlemen. If you're now joining us, this is this week's episode of Guyana's Oil and You. I'm your hostess, journalist at Kaieteur News, Ms. Kiana Wilberg, and joining us tonight is Mr. David Patterson, the Shadow Minister for Oil and Gas for the political opposition. Mr. Patterson, before we went to our first commercial break, the question was posed, which states, if you had the chance, what different would you do in the handling of this gas to energy project?
Kiana, the difference that we would have done, obviously we were very, very cautious. Under the ministry, we did about 6 different studies. I think the government has released 5, and all the studies they did, and we were nowhere near completed. They've decided on a site and they've decided on a whole project without even actually finishing the whole companion of studies that you would have to do. So we were not at the stage of project write-off, in the sense of project sanctioning. Mm-hmm. What we were the stage as is we were trying to eliminate all the various aspects. So we were the stage of site selection. And then when we approve a site, we would have now started doing all the EIAs. You'd have done the geotechnical studies. We still had to sit down with Exxon, because Exxon at the time, Exxon were saying that you have to pay them for the gas. We had approached the World Bank just to say to the World Bank that we need help in the economics of this project and those things like that. So it was at a project developmental stage. That is why we went and we purchased the 47 megawatts of power, which is at Garden Eden. So therefore, it was an idea, and it was this was a project idea, but we never signed off on it. We knew that there are several other studies that has to be done before you can actually consider it to be a feasible project to move ahead. Mm-hmm. One of the studies, as I've mentioned before, the excess gas. We were going to commission a study on if we can reintroduce public transportation and use the LPG, LNG to power the public transportation. Obviously you can do that. We were looking to see how is it feasible if you're going to have LPG, which is what the government is saying. How are we going to distribute it? How is it? You can produce 2,000 barrels a day. How are you going to get it there? Are you going to bottle it and those things like that? We still had studies to do on. Exxon said to us, and that energy narrative confirmed it, that at least 48 to 72 hours per year the pipeline will be down for maintenance, routine maintenance and servicing and those things like that. So if you have 200 megawatts of power and you're powering the country by that, and then 2-3 days you have no gas piping from the SPS, so you have to have a storage facility. Mm-hmm. We were also looking, of course, the Japanese came and the Japanese said, the best thing to do is actually put a floating power barge off the course, because it's going to be 15 years, and rather than piping it to shore. So we were looking at all of these issues, but so it was at the project feasibility stage, whereby we said, if we land it, these are the costs. How much will it cost the government? Does it make any sense? how much it will cost GPL, because GPL has to take the power. Would it be better if we do as the Japanese suggested? I mean, in their Japanese master plan, they said to get a power barge and have the power plants offshore and just pipe the power to shore, and then at the end of the 15 years, move it, sell it, scrap it. So it's not much we can do different, because we have no final decision was actually made, no location, because obviously the stage that I was at before to transfer to the Department of Energy was to say, listen to me, let us do a process elimination. Let us, because of course the government has claimed that they looked at sites. They haven't looked at any sites. They came in and said Wales, but under my ministry, we looked at least 15 different sites. And we said to do further studies, we can't do further studies on 15. We wanted a process elimination. We said, let's just look at Woodlands area on the East Coast. If the studies, when you finish that, were not conducive, when the whole project looked, we would have gone to another site. So that was the stage.
So you didn't determine feasibility as yet, because you didn't even know which location you were going to do.
Right. So therefore, obviously, what you need is a location, and then you do further studies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so therefore, the desktop studies, the analyses that you did pointed to either Berbice or to the East Coast. The lands in Berbice were very contentious, and I've said that before. I mean, our first preference would have been Berbice. The studies showed how Berbice, along the Berbice River would have been. What we found, but one of the criteria for land selection was that it must be state-owned. And when we announced that we'd like to go to Crab Island, the Berbice River, all sorts of strange things happened. Persons turned up with leases. Overseas investors wrote us saying that the government of Guyana would have sold them the land, but there's no recording, because Lands and Surveys was part of the site selection committee. So there was no record of Lands and Surveys. A person came with leases and what you call it, what thing you get from Go Invest, investment agreement. Mm-hmm. And so we said, fair enough. And then, of course, I mean, they issued the Berbice Bridge and those things like that. So the next best, second rank, highest ranked place would be in Woodlands, and which was Exxon's preferred site all the while. They always preferred to go to Woodlands, Cronbrook area. We said, no, we're not going where you want. We're going to do a study. So we were at the stage where we're saying, listen to me, Art, let us do further investigation in this particular area on the East Coast, the Woodlands area, and that has several things. You know, I mean, obviously, it is access to it, the studies, the climate mitigation issues. You know, I mean, the height of it and those things. So we wanted, at the stage whereby it was at, we wanted permission. The ministry wanted permission to do further studies. GPL now, when you identify a site, that GPL will know actually would now kick in with their section of the work, because you had to get the power from there, and that was cost was being borne by GPL. Their initial numbers, if we went to that area, East Coast, was $25 million to get the power to GPL. But further studies showed how to get it from Wales is $84 million. So everything the government does is triple, double and triple and those things like that. So no final decision was made, I mean, pending several studies, you know what I mean, several studies. We also wanted to have, and this was under the Ministry of Business, they had approached the IDB to do a study now on industries that we could have encouraged around the natural gas site if it was landed, if it's woodland. So therefore the Ministry of Business were at a stage whereby they would do another study to say, oh, listen to me, these are the industries at which you should actually go and promote around the natural gas site and have it all done. And then when all of that would have been finished, you would have had a project sign off at somewhere if it was feasible and economic. Remember, though, that to sign off with this project, you also had to have gas sales agreement with Exxon. When we started, when we first mooted the idea of bringing gas to shore, Exxon, quite clear, 50-50. The gas is coming in, they own half, we own half. We were able to negotiate that and say to them, well, it doesn't make no sense us proceeding if we have to pay. And they wanted it indexed against the Henry Hub's International Index. Initially, we said, well, that wouldn't be a flyer. That wouldn't work at all. We have no energy security. You know what I mean? We'd be paying out of our noses for this project if under that premise. So eventually, it was came to the stage where it was that, okay, fair enough, the gas is the government of Guyana's gas. I mean, they've reverted from that, from what I heard the people are saying, so we're now going to pay for some of the gas. And the only issue that the government cost that we had to concentrate on would be the transmission which is the pipeline. Mm-hmm. So that's the only cost that would be passed on to us. We have to repay it. So at the point of saying it was just a concept. We did the studies. I mean, we were very, very cautious and to ensure that we don't run ahead like what's being done now. Put the cart before the horse, announce, and all of that, unless we had the entirely full suit. I can remember the PPP, while in opposition, said, "Oh, we wasting time on studies and we wasting times and those things like that." You know, I mean, they are not big into studies. They are big into rushing ahead. Skeldon, the Barbies Bridge, the airport. No studies, no feasibility. Just do it. Some people find it attractive and find, oh, the government is doing something, and while you guys, but in the long run, it always works a detriment to the people. When you invest so much of our money in projects, big projects.
Do you see the gas to shore project?
Oh, for sure.
Being another.
Oh, for sure. It is definitely not well thought out at all.
But do you see it becoming another?
It already is. It's already is.
It's already another Skeldon.
It's already it is. Look, $900 million. Unless Exxon can bring, that's just for the pipeline. Mm-hmm. The generating sets will be another $250 million. You know what I mean? The infrastructure that has to go around it. You know what I mean? You have to build roads, you have to build jetties, you have to build storage facilities and those things like that. That'll be another $200 million. So we're talking about somewhere like $1.4 billion.
Do you see it going?
No, for sure. $900 million. Exxon have been very explicit saying that $900 million, and if you go back to their consultations, they said that $900 million is for 4 components: the pipeline, a temporary laydown yard, a LPG plant, and something else. I can't remember. Then that is only what Exxon $900 million, and they're taking this out of our profits from the oil. Somebody has to buy the generators. Somebody has to build the roads in and out of there. Somebody has to build a wharf or somebody has to build storage facilities, because as I said, the plant will be down for 72 hours. You have to get HFO, I would assume, enough there to power the plant for 72 hours until the pipeline is back up again. It's very expensive to store natural gas because you have to freeze it and those things. Very, very expensive. So therefore, the only option they may have, I would assume, would be to store heavy fuel like you do for GPL and those things. But there's no discussion about that whatsoever. It is definitely, and then of course, when you put this $900 million pipeline there, then you're going to put another $275 million worth of generators. You have to get the power from there to GPL. GPL's main substation is in Sophia. They may be considering building a new main substation somewhere else closer, I would assume. I don't know. There's nothing on that. That has to be put in it. You have to cross the Demerara River. The PPP's last attempt to cross the Demerara River is at Vreeden Hoop and Kingston. And you know how often that submarine cable has been destroyed. So I don't know what their plans are, if they're going to go below the surface, but that hasn't, because of the silty conditions of our soil. That hasn't been proved. That hasn't proven successful at all. Or they may try to go overhead, and even if you go overhead, that is an even more expensive option because you have to clear 1.4 kilometers of river. It is. It is just a here, and then they're going to do it all in 2 years. So there's a possibility, there is a possibility, and a very, very distinct possibility, that Exxon will get a pipeline to shore before, and so you'd have a pipeline there, and there'll be no generator, or you may have a pipeline generator, but GPL can't use it because you can't get the power to the system. It's a harebrained scheme. I've said it publicly and I'll say it again, it's a Ponzi scheme. You know what I mean? It is just somebody got up and said, well, let's go there. And you said, well, ours, you mean like Field of Dreams, build it and we will come. So they're just building it. There's no sort of plan, you know what I mean? And the excuse they use is that Wales development Wales' estates is being shut down. We wanted to go on the East Coast. I mean, of course, there's all those communities we're talking from, all the way from Mahaica all the way up to Barry, Belgium. They deserve equal treatment as ever. They're more residents and resource persons in those areas than in Wales. And nothing wrong with Wales. I'm not saying that we shouldn't go there. But there's nothing that can convince me that they have thought out about this. And the haste in which they're going is extremely frightening. Extremely frightening. From the, you know what I mean, up to 2018, Exxon would have completed a seismic study up to the shelf, the continental shelf. You know, there is, if you've seen a profile between here and Lisa, for about 20 miles off our shore, there's like a mud bank, and then it just is a very steep drop on those things. So Exxon would have, up to 2018, they would have used their seismic equipment, the same one they do their surveys, and they would have gone up to that shelf. And they were waiting on the government for us to identify a location. That's what we were trying to do. So therefore, they would do the studies coming in from there to the shore so that they can get a better idea. So I don't know if that's done. We brought in through Exxon and the Guyana Lands and Surveys, they brought in a aircraft, I think it's from Colombia. It spent 2 months here doing, and the information at Lands and Survey, doing a LiDAR survey over the woodlands area and over the coastal area. I mean, this is like a seismic survey using an airplane. So that we can get a better idea of the topographical layout of the proposed areas. All of those things were done. Under none of those things was Wales, Reed Hoop, Potentia ever considered. Ever considered. I mean, Exxon's own, they hired a firm, ERM, who logo is the best environmental consulting firm in the world. They hired ERM, and ERM set out, don't go there. Don't go Wales, Freedom Hoop, because of the several issues, the location.
This was communicated to you
via
Exxon.
Exxon would have said, because of course now remember it was the process of elimination. I think it's on my Facebook page if you go there. I mean the report from ERM, which says that and they eliminated Freedom Hoop Wales estate. They eliminated it for cost. They eliminated it for environmental concerns. They eliminated it because of the oil and gas industry is being serviced by the Demerara River, right? And I don't think that would change because I know the government seems quite happy with that. So why burden already congested area and already congested waterway, already very densely populated area? Why burden them with putting a pipeline through this when in Guyana we have about like 500 miles of shoreline border in the Atlantic Ocean? You know what I mean? Why just congest everything there? And the ERM said the environmental risks it's just too much when you have other options. Obviously, we raised this with Exxon. I raised this particular question with Exxon when we met them in April, response was once again, the
This is
government
what?
of Guyana has asked us to do this, and we are doing it.
All right. Well, Mr. Patterson, on that note, we've reached the end of our program, and in just about 2 or 3 minutes, I'd ask you to wrap up with your concluding thoughts on how the oil sector, how you believe the oil sector is being managed by the Vice President and the government by extension, and if you believe that your successor is learning from the mistakes made by the APNU AFC coalition.
Guyana, hindsight is 20/20 vision. That's an old saying which I grew up with, you know what I mean? So we know more, Guyanese public know more about oil and gas now than we did in 2015, 2016, 2017. But the reality is that the Guyanese public are not as enthused as we. Today they announced the 20th fine.
Yes.
And not a soul rejoiced. I mean, I can remember in 2015 when they announced the second fine, I mean, there's a big euphoria. People were saying, oh yes, well, things gonna happen. They announced the 20th fine today and not a single public comment. I mean, you're gonna ask the man in the street, he will suck his teeth on you and say, man, that matter to us because that wouldn't come to us. I mean, the various international agencies that has said to us, be cautious. I mean, and this outside, be cautious what you do. There will be a lot of snake oil salesmen, and we see them. There are a lot of snake oil salesmen here. They come and profess to be experts, and they come to sell you the best thing that you can't. Meaning they sell you a product or an idea that if you invest with them, you can't lose. You know, the international agencies, etc., implementing natural resource fund and have it very openly and transparently. Carry it to Parliament. There's a natural resource fund, but the government hasn't activated it. I mean, what they've done instead is borrow against it. So we have the $400 million in the bank in America. To activate it, they have to come to Parliament. They have to provide the information. There's an investment committee that will have to say yes or no. To avoid all of that, they've left the money there. A year on in their tenure, they're just making things, but they're going to borrow against it because anybody will lend you money. Any bank will lend you money if you have that large amount of money in a deposit. All they will do is put a garnish on it, and the people and they'll lend you money, and then of course we have to pay the interest. So therefore, we're paying to borrow to use our own funds that we have there. So that's not activated. I mean, there's several other issues that they said that would have been activated. They haven't. So right now it's extremely opaque. I mean, the minister. I mean, and I think is a decent enough young fellow. This is the Minister of Natural Resources, who, in theory, that the oil and gas sector is supposed to fall under. They're talking about Barrett. Yes, Vikram Barrett. We have caught him, and you have caught him. I think your newspapers caught him, and I think all the public misleading the public, saying it out that Exxon has permission to flare gas. When he said that in Parliament, that Exxon environmental permits them to flare up to 16 billion cubic feet of gas, and when challenged, say where you find that, where do you see that? He says, oh no, my guy can show you. When Exxon, who of course have to, they know that they will now be liable, they are the ones that came and said, no, that's not true. The minister hasn't even been honest enough to come to the public to say, listen to me, I misled you. So if that is just how the structure is, I mean, the vice president gets up and makes announcements which you would have thought would have been done by the minister, which you thought would have been done based on some study, but that's not done. The Wales Development Authority. No one knows the ownership of that. I mean, no one knows the ownership of that. I mean, man, it's just like the Atlantic Holding, which they built the Marriott, which was just Brassington and the company secretary.
I don't believe the Wales Authority is set up as yet, though.
So someone has to be in charge of all the tenders that they're putting out there. Is it NISL? Who you submit? So that even makes it even worse. So therefore, NISL as a are they the ones driving all, because there are tenders out for not shore-based, there are tenders out for power distributors, there are tenders out for persons to submit expressions of interest to do industries around the natural gas. With some authority, somebody has to be done. There's no legislation. And we were told that the Wales Development Authority, the public is the authority to look at that. The ownership of the land. They went to court to try and get back the land that was legally given out by NISL, and they did not succeed. Are they going to compulsory acquire the land? So it's a very, 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 very vague and loose arrangement, and they're just rushing ahead. I had the opportunity to speaking to someone who knows some of the consultants that they're trying to hire, and the consultants' response was that every single thing that they're doing is costing double and triple because how they want to do it. They want to go a specific area. They want to take a specific route. So therefore, the gas pipeline, if you look at it, it's like a snake. I mean, everyone knows that when you build a pipeline, gas, you try to get a straight line as possible, cut out the amount of turns and 90-degree angles. But because where they want to go and who they want to bypass, and because they don't own it, if you look at where the land, the pipeline is going to cross, when it gets to the land, it's like a snake. And that obviously we will lose gas because of that. I mean, just by the natural flow, the volume of gas that you pump out will not be the same as you get out, because just purely because of how it's transported. We have to pay Exxon for what they pump. Now we receive. So therefore, we'll be pumping 50 million cubic feet of carbon. Say we probably receive $45 million. 45 million cubic feet. We lose about 5 or so. There's a calculation. We lose that in the transmission coming to shore because of where it is. Nothing. We've raised it in opposition, but nothing, and they're just going willy-nilly. And then, of course, the private sector there, as with Amila Falls, the private sector just pirating what they're saying. The private sector hasn't even asked for a briefing. Haven't asked. Of course, if you go to one of these banks and you try to borrow $900 million, the amount of paperwork you would have to produce to get it. But that's not being done now.
Mr. Patterson, thank you very much for taking the time to be on Guyana's Oil and You tonight. I'm sure that our listeners and viewers definitely received a lot of information that they can now add to the public debate on what is going on with their natural resource and how best they need to challenge the authorities that be for information that they need to make informed decisions. So thank you for being part of tonight's discussion. To our listeners and our viewers, I am, as usual, very happy to have you with us for our weekly discussions on oil and gas. Do be sure to join us next week, same time, same place, where we'll have another guest to speak on another aspect of Guyana's oil and gas. Do continue to have a wonderful night. And Mr. Patterson, again, thank you for being here with us.
My pleasure. Good night.
Good night, everyone, and please be safe.